privilege of serving as the president of Hunter College, where the American dream still comes true, and the alma mater of the great Audre Lorde, Hunter High School class of 1951, Hunter College class of 1959, and Thomas Hunter Distinguished Professor and Faculty Member from 1982 to 1986, an inspiration truly to this campus. But these brief highlights cannot begin to do justice to Audre Lorde's vast resume of accomplishments or measure her enormous impact on the worlds of literature and activism. In her own time and in the decades since her untimely death 30 years ago this fall. Today we gather to both celebrate her brief life and her enormous work, and to formally link her name to this school for all time to come by naming the crossroads of her beloved Hunter College and the former home of our high school where she attended on Lexington Avenue and 68th Street in her honor. And here's our sign for the building where Hunter launched the Audre Lorde Women's Poetry Center, with Audre herself in the room where it happened, just upstairs on the 4th floor. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us for the ceremony. We will not only hear all about the great Audre Lorde, but also hear her actual voice as well. I want to welcome and thank Councilmember Keith Powers, from whom you will hear shortly, for all he did to make this moment possible. Thank you, Keith. There is so much history in the air, and we name this crossroads today. In doing so, we signal special gratitude to a true warrior poet, as she called herself. The self-described sister outsider got under the collective skin of intolerance, who used her pen and her voice to articulate the struggles of the dispossessed and the underrepresented, people of color, women, the LGBTQ community, and late in life, the cancer sufferers on whose behalf she fought, even as she fought to extend her own life. She was a librarian, a poet, an essayist, a teacher, an activist, a mother, a lesbian, a survivor. That's how she wanted us to know her. And in each role, she was uncompromising, willing to risk danger to advance unpopular causes, eager to sacrifice her comfort for her beliefs. I write for those women who do not speak, she once said, for those who do not have a voice because they were so terrified. She was prolific, she was passionate, and most of all, she was unafraid. Born in Harlem in 1934 to Caribbean immigrant parents, she was a child who spoke and wrote late. She actually describes her young self as inarticulate. Yet somehow she found the voice to strike at bigotry, racism, sexism, and homophobia, and to celebrate unity and sisterhood. At Hunter High School, Audre found what she called a lifeline, a place that she loved fiercely, because it was one of the first schools she attended where her brilliance and creativity was not only valued, but embraced and celebrated. Here's how she described Hunter High School, quote, "For the first time I met young women my own age, black and white, who spoke a language I could usually understand and reply within. I met girls with whom I could share feelings and dreams and ideas without fear. I found adults who tolerated my feelings and ideas without punishment for insolence, and even a few who respected and admired them." And I'm so proud today that we're joined by our students today from today's Hunter College High School. Audre was frank and unafraid even as a teenager. She boldly submitted a high school poem to 17 magazines, and they printed it. Audre became a professional published poet at the age of 15. "I am a black woman poet," she rejoiced. Fact, and outside the realm of choice. There would be no silencing her. And she famously warned, "Your silence will not protect you." As Audre put it, "I have a duty to speak the truth as I see it, and to share not just my triumphs, not just the things that feel good, but the pain, the intense, often unmitigated pain. Life is very short," she said, as if anticipating her own 14-year-long struggle with cancer. "What we have to do must be done now." And she did. It was as if Audre lived and worked and even died according to the inspiring words of the longtime Hunter motto, Mihi cura futuri, the care of the future is mine. As Audre interpreted that commitment, I write because I am a warrior, and my poetry is my weapon. Audre deployed her weapons with extraordinary power and passion, and that's why the writing has outlived the writer. Audre was only on this earth for 58 years, but her work has endured for decades and will be heard and studied and appreciated as long as there are readers, as long as there are new causes to be advocated, old wrongs to be righted, and scattered communities to unite. What an extraordinary legacy. As we celebrate her life and work this afternoon, I want to thank those in the Hunter faculty who have championed Audre Lorde for years and whose own voices have been heard and acknowledged, including two who were Audre Lorde's students, whom you'll hear from later in the program. And I want to give a special thanks to my friend and colleague, Jackie Brown, our professor, who has been a true warrior. We are honoring Audre and to make sure that Hunter has honored and memorialized Audre's impact on her alma mater and the wider community. Also, a shout out to our colleague and friend, Professor Anthony Brown, the chair of the Department of Africana and Puerto Rican Latino Studies, another great leader. And to our colleagues here from the English Department, the History Department, the Department of Women and Gender Studies, who also inspired this dedication. I'm very excited to learn this morning that Women in Gender Studies with Jen Gabori will be offering a class on Audre Lorde, and I think it may be, Jen, oversubscribed. And we acknowledge the tremendous work done by our Presidential Force on Racial Equity to cement Hunter's commitment to justice and opportunity, inspiring the street naming, and I want to thank our Provost, Belita Dent, and our Dean of Diversity, John Rose. Thank you for your time. Like all of you, we have been moved beyond measure by Audre's powerful words and their meaning for today. Poetry is not only dream and vision, she said. It is the skeleton architecture of our lives. It lays the foundations for a future of change, a bridge across our fears of what has never been before. Or, as she put it, poetry is not a luxury. It is a vital necessity of our existence. As today's women take up new fights against restrictions on their independence and their freedoms, one can almost hear Audre's irrepressible voice declaring again, as she once did, oppressed people are always being asked to stretch a little more, to bridge the gap between blindness and humanity. She would never stop trying to span that chasm. It is not difference which immobilizes us, Audre Lorde kept emphasizing, but silence. And no one could silence Audre Lorde. I like to think that some of Audre's fierce nature, the warrior in her warrior poet, was created here at Hunter College. Audre started at Hunter College after graduating from high school in 1951. But she took some time away to find herself and embrace her need for academic nourishment. As our own Professor Karen Hunter wrote, Audre returned and, quote, found her place at Hunter settling into the confirmation of her intelligence. Audre believed in naming her oppressors and articulating her grievances, even when it hurt. But she had no tolerance for infighting among the aggrieved. She demanded sisterhood and shared values, never wavering in her belief in the power of community. And that is why it is so heartening to see so many communities gathered here today, so moving, all of you here to celebrating her. Thank you to the officials who are here, and I want to thank particularly representing Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine, Deputy Borough President Keisha Sutton James, who is herself a graduate of Hunter High School. Thank you, Keisha. Also the granddaughter of the great late Percy Sutton, who did so much for CUNY, so that's really important. I want to welcome our community board members and especially our fearless chairman, Russell Swire. Thank you for helping us to celebrate this community treasure. Audre's words were tough, often brittle, sometimes painful, even at their most beautiful. They were also filled with hope for humanity. And what is most remarkable of all, her words seemed utterly modern, as if she knew somehow that some of the struggles of her time would remain unresolved and urgent long after her passing. Today, we will once again hear those words, prose and poetry alike, some in Audrey's own voice, some recited by her one-time Hunter students and colleagues, and others by undergraduates who are studying her today. As this multi-generational tribute will show, Audrey's work is not only mesmerizing, it remains relevant to our own challenges, linking us across time. 3 decades after her death, Audrey continues to demand that her readers care for the future she was not blessed to know. After all, as Audrey said in Sister Outsider, you cannot use someone else's fire. You can only use your own, and in order to do that, you must first be willing to believe that you have it. In Audrey's name, let us all keep this fire burning. Let us do the work. Let us evoke her courage, the courage of this warrior poet who famously said, and this is my favorite quote, "I am deliberate and afraid of nothing." In her fearlessness, we find strength and inspiration. In her suffering, we find hope. And her arsenal of words, we find what she called prayers from the front line. To those prayers answered and unanswered alike, we are proud to say today, amen. Audre Lorde once said, each of us is here because someone else before us did something to make it possible. Many of us are here today because of what Audre Lorde did to make things possible, to make us possible. So it is an honor for us at Hunter College to honor her. And speaking of people who make things possible, we would not be here today celebrating Audre Lorde if it had not been for a local warrior for the East Side and for our own Hunter College, our extraordinary, incomparable New York City Councilman Keith Powers. Keith has always been here for the communities of the East Side, and especially for Hunter College, in supporting so many of our projects at the college and the high school. And we know it's not just because his mother went to Hunter College, but maybe a little. Today we thank him, we celebrate him, we show him our gratitude for making this happen. It was Keith who introduced the resolution naming this crossroads, our crossroads, for Audre Lorde. He got it done, and today's ceremony is a real tribute to his warrior leadership. Please join me in welcoming City Councilman Keith Powers.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. And I have to say, I am blown away about the attendance here and the ceremony that you guys have put together here. So thank you, everyone, for being here, being part of a really important day, I think, for the city and also for, of course, the Hunter College community. And thank you to Hunter College, all the folks from Hunter College who helped make this happen, but particularly President Jennifer Raab. Let's give her another big round of applause. And many more other people, including my friend Harold Holzer, who's here, the community board, we have our chair, Russell Squire here, and of course my team. I have Kate and Kay from my team here as well. I introduced the resolution, as you might believe. They helped get it actually passed, but I'm really grateful to have them here joining us as well. I'm honored here today because this is celebrating one of the most trailblazing figures here in the city and in our nation's history. And of course, it's an honor to be doing this at any moment in time, but it's an honor to be doing it right here with the Hunter community because of her importance to this community and to the schools here. Many of us know the story, and you're going to hear a lot more about her today, but quite frankly, I don't think we can ever speak too much about her work and legacy. She's a New York native, of course she's a Hunter grad, and she became an icon in literary history, political thought, and social activism. Her poetry wasn't just immaculately written, and you're going to hear some of it, I believe, here today. It was transformative. She was a champion of equality, exerting tremendous influence over the fight for civil rights, LGBTQ rights, women's rights, and disability rights, and in many ways was ahead of her time. I can go through all the works that she did, but I want to just mention she received the National Book Award in 1988. She was New York's Poet Laureate in 1991. And her works have seemed to only garner more recognition and praise since her death in 1992. We feel her lasting memory here, and of course we're here to make sure that memory is there permanently here in New York City, but particularly in the CUNY community where she studied, taught, and built an extraordinary career. We dedicate this street to someone that's inspired so many generations of students, faculty, and administration here at Hunter. And I have to mention, as our country faces a very bleak post-Roe versus Wade world, there's absolutely no better time to honor the legacy of an advocate for justice, equality, and civil rights. I just want to say one more thing, which is that we as a city council, have this honor and opportunity to be able to name streets here in the city of New York, a little known power of the New York City Council. Choose wisely. But I only do that in really, really special occasions. And I do it when I believe that there is the intersection of someone that is so important to this city and to our community, and we really have a purpose here at the right time and sort of in the right place. And in this one, when I talked to Harold and I talked to President Raab, it felt so right and perfect to be doing it. And as I mentioned the Roe versus Wade, we didn't plan that, but now more than ever, as I said, it is really the right time. And I think about the reason we do this and the reason we do it, and we name a lot of streets, but this one is really particularly special, I think. And I think it's special for two reasons. One is, it is nice and it is important to honor people and make sure that their legacy in the city and in the country are remembered by people who had the opportunity to work with them or study with them or get to know them. But I think actually more importantly, it's for some student who's never heard of Audre Lorde, who's going to look at that sign and maybe go Google who was Audre Lorde, and then is going to discover her legacy. Because many of us know who she was and know what she contributed, but I do it. I walk around the city and I sometimes see a name and I go find out who that person was. And I think about the Hunter community, that the students that aren't here yet, that are going to find out who Audre Lorde is and then go into a classroom one day and find out a lot more about her. And I think that's really honestly why we're here today. So thank you to everyone for being here. Thank you to the Hunter community for really making this moment happen. And I'm really honored to be a big part of this special day.
You said it so eloquently, Keith. That is why we did this. I think I saw Professor Brown shaking her head. That's why we needed to do it, so that her memory, what she did and her impact never gets lost. And that's what this will do by this sign. And I do want to echo your thanks to our own Harold Holzer from Roosevelt House for helping us pull this wonderful event together. So thank you, Harold. And now it's very exciting for me personally to bring to our podium the MC for today's readings. And we really could not have found a more perfect person for the job. Spectrum's News, New York One's anchor, and let's just say it, the on-air star of New York One, Cheryl Will. Cheryl, we did a little research, and we conclude that you are the only New York One newscaster who's been at the station from the very beginning, 1992, and that just means that in just a couple of months, you will be celebrating your 30th anniversary at New York One, right? Now, I don't know if you know this, Cheryl, but in New York City landmark law, at 30, you're eligible to be designated a landmark. So I'm going to just apply. Okay. Now, of course, Cheryl has been and remains so much more than a news anchor. She's a groundbreaker in her own right. She was the only New York One reporter to interview a sitting president, the president of Liberia, Nobel Prize winner Ellen Sirleaf. She was the first to interview a UN Secretary General, and she was the first African-American reporter at New York One to win an Emmy. She's anchored both Live at 10 and hosted In Focus with Cheryl Wills. And yet there's another side to Cheryl, and I think that brings her here today. She is also an author who has written powerfully about one of her ancestors, a one-time enslaved person who fought in the Union Army during the Civil War. The book, Die Free, earned her an invitation to speak at the UN General Assembly on the transatlantic slave trade, the first journalist ever to do so. She's won so many other awards for her work on television and on the printed page, and she's even appeared on Law & Order as herself. But she says she is proudest of all to be a lifetime descendant member of the sons and daughters of U.S. colored troops, the name for those heroic African Americans who fought for their own freedom. And as if that isn't enough, Cheryl just this week released a new book that I cannot wait to read. Isn't Her Grace Amazing? About the women who changed gospel music, including Aretha Franklin and CeCe Winans. Congratulations, Cheryl. And we are excited to have you here today, but also to get your commitment to return to Hunter to do your own program on this new extraordinary book on music. Please welcome the extraordinary Cheryl Williams.
by learning to live in harmony with your contradictions can you keep it afloat. It is not our differences that divide us, it is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. We must wake up knowing we have work to do and go to bed knowing that we've done it. Those are the words of Audre Lorde. Because Audre, speaking truth to power, was a 24-hour day commitment. Bringing communities together was a 7-day-a-week task. The fight for civil rights, LGBTQ rights, women's rights, cancer patients' rights never left her. She gave voice to the struggle, and the struggle was real. Achingly beautiful voice she possessed. What an inspiration she was, and remains. She's here among us today. And I'm so proud to be part of this beautiful ceremony. Thank you, President Raab and Councilmember Powers, for gathering us here today, a spot Audre knew oh so well. Audre knew this very powerful institution as a teacher. As we have heard, she was a student and professor right here at this prestigious Hunter College, which has been making the American dream come true for students of all backgrounds for some 150 years. I'm so delighted on behalf of my colleagues at New York One to be with you today and to introduce a series of readers, all of whom will bring their powerful perspective to Audre Lorde's life and their own voices and their own power to her enduring words. And speaking of those precious words, let me remind everyone who did not notice as they arrived here at Hunter College Hunter West today, Audre's books are for sale at a table located in the back of this lobby. To my left, please don't leave home without your very own Audre Lorde volume. Now, let's pause to hear Audre's own magical, powerful voice.
The next poems are excerpt from the book From a Land Where Other People Live, published by Broadside in 1973. And for each of you, be who you are and will be. Learn to cherish that boisterous black angel that drives you up one day and down another, protecting the place where your power rises, running like hot blood from the same source as your pain. When you are hungry, learn to eat whatever sustains you until morning, but do not be misled by details simply because you live them. Do not let your head deny your hands any memory of what passes through them, nor your eyes, nor your heart. Everything can be used except what is wasteful. And you will need to remember this when you are accused of destruction, even when they are dangerous. Examine the hearts of those machines which you hate before you discard them. And do not mourn the lack of their power, lest you be condemned to relive them. If you do not learn to hate, you will never be lonely enough to love easily, nor will you always be brave, although it does not grow any easier. Do not pretend to convenient beliefs, even when they are righteous. You will never be able to defend your city while shouting. Remember, our sun is not the most noteworthy star, only the nearest. Respect whatever pain you bring back from your dreaming, but do not look for new gods in the sea, nor in any part of a rainbow. Each time you love, love as deeply as if it were forever. Only nothing is eternal. Speak proudly to your children wherever you may find them. Tell them you are the offspring of slaves, and your mother was a princess in darkness.
I think she heard that all of you respect that her words still resonate today. Why don't we give a round of applause for her? Amazing way with words. On February 9th, 1982, some 40 years ago, the curators at the Library of Congress were wise enough to invite Audre to their auditorium to record some of her poems. Through that surviving archive, we are still able to enjoy the style and cadence of a great poet leaning into her own creativity. By all accounts, Audre was a magnificent reader, one of the first poets to really dramatize her work. She was, and as she once said, that is the work of the poet within each one of us, to envision what has not yet been and to work with every fiber of who we are to make the reality pursuit of those visions irresistible. Well, here is the truly irresistible Audre reading for each of you. Well, forgive me, I should have had a binder like President Raab. In 2018, she was named by the Library of Congress as National Ambassador for Young People's Literature, but I think Audre would be proudest of all to know that some school boards and school libraries have been trying to ban her books and erase her presence. But as Audre would say, silence is not an option. Please welcome Jacqueline Woodson.
Thanks so much. I was like, oh, they had the young people's literature when Audre Lorde was alive? It's so great to be here celebrating Audre Lorde. I was thinking about, as I was walking up Lexington Avenue, myself as a young person. Today marks the publication of my 37th book. And I think that at least 20 of them would not be here if it was not for Audre Lorde. I remember when my sister was in 7th grade, she entered Hunter High School, and she came home a few weeks later and she said, well, you know, Audre Lorde went to my high school, and I'm like, who that? But because she considered herself so much smarter than me, I started researching Audre Lorde via the library because there was no Google. And I found out that this was a woman who identified as a lesbian. Like, you can do that? As a poet, as an activist, as a mother, you can be all those things. And I had already wanted to be a writer since I was 7, and here was a woman coming with a green light who I'd never met, saying, you can do that, you can be that. And I started writing, and I realized that I could talk to young people. Yes, those books will get banned, and they continue to get banned, but banning isn't the worst thing that can happen. It means someone's out there listening. But I realized that I could write these stories about queer folks, about activism, about Black poets, about living as an underserved family, and people would be there to hear them, that people needed to hear them. And Audre Lorde was the introduction to that. My beloved went on to attend Hunter College here, and one of the things she loved about this space was the people who had come through it, including Audre Lorde. And it was through Audre Lorde's words that I met Professor Goodman, Melinda Goodman, and it was also Audre Lorde's words from which Gloria Joseph published Wind the Spirit, which my bestie, Linda Villarosa, edited. And I think about the way that the people who come before us to show us the way to go. And I know that I wouldn't be here doing the work I am doing if Audre Lorde had not said, you can be out, you can be Black, you can be poor, you can be female. And I love what you said about the young people who didn't know Audre Lorde coming to know her, because that is important. I was watching Bohemian Rhapsody with my kids who are now 14 and 20, and Freddie Mercury was in the closet and was struggling with HIV, and they were like, well, what do you mean he's not telling anyone he's gay? What do you mean that people couldn't talk about being queer? And they had no context for it. So in the same way that during Audre Lorde's time, there wasn't a way to be out and be safe, and she made a way out of no way and allowed us, the queers coming behind her, to be safe, to tell our stories, so that this sign, this commemoration of her work is doing just that. It's showing us this way out of no way that Audre Lorde made, and it's showing us that we're safer in this world because of her. Thank you for being here.
An honor to have you with us today. Thank you for that. Before we hear more of Audre Lorde's work from those who studied with her, let me call on two women who knew Audre particularly well to read a statement on behalf of her daughter, Dr. Elizabeth Lorde Rollins, who is actually on call today as a medical doctor and could not be with us in person. It's a pleasure to call on writer Claire Koss and John Jay College professor and biographer of Eleanor Roosevelt, Dr. Blanche Weissen-Cook. When you entered the hall today, you heard Audre's voice from a radio interview conducted decades ago on WBAI radio with Blanche as host, and as far as we know, the only recorded interview with Audre. So thank you, Blanche. Ladies.
Hello everyone, this is so exciting. And I have been asked by Dr. Elizabeth Lorde Rollins to read a few words from her, just for all of you and all of us here. Thank you so much.
And I'm going to take a picture for the children.
And I wanted you to know that we're each wearing necklaces created by Audre. She was an artist, and so many people don't know that. This is one of not her first, sort of in the middle. And we're giving our collection that she's given to us for birthdays to Spelman, so everybody can see them. Although it's been decades, I still remember how thrilled my mother, Audre Lorde, was when she began teaching at Hunter. I visited her office in the West Building often through the years, and she'd look out the window at Thomas Hunter Hall and sometimes tell me a story or two about when she was a Hunter High School student. I know that my mother dated the beginnings of her scholarship to those early days at Hunter High, and that she prized highly the education she got at Hunter High and Hunter College. As a Hunter professor, she pushed her students to ask and answer the hard questions that characterize truly excellent educations and to push themselves in ways that are her lasting legacy. So I know how extremely proud she would be and gratified to have 68th Street and Lexington Avenue named in her honor. How proud, indeed, our entire family is. Naming the street that anchors the Hunter College campus for Audre Lorde honors Hunter and the entire CUNY system as much as it honors my mother. Not only was she a lauded pioneer for social justice and transformation, she was a distinguished alumna, and she wielded the tools she gained at Hunter tirelessly until her early death. The battles she fought and the words she left behind have become a rallying cry for all those who seek true meritocracy, social justice, and an end to institutionalized violence. Hunter has a reason to be proud of Audre Lorde, and it does Hunter proud to have 68th Street named after her. With respect, Elizabeth Lorde Rollins.
I just want to say how moved we are to be here, how moved. And we want to thank Jackie and the gang. Audrey always said, never go anywhere without your gang. Kathleen, Walsh, Darcy, and all the gang that really made this happen. Her students and I wrote a few words because I'm an historian. I couldn't help myself. That put 68th Street in context, because it's not the first designation. Universities, many universities have named chairs, study programs, libraries, seminar rooms in Audre Lorde's honor, including the University of Louisville, Spelman, where her papers are, and Columbia University. In February 2021, the Cathedral of St. John the Divine celebrated the induction, quote, of the phenomenal Audre Lorde into the American Poets' Corner. On Sunday, 21 July 2019, the New York Times ran a full-page article, a Berlin, that Audre Lorde would appreciate. It's a moving celebration of Audre's many extended visits to Berlin, where, quote, she played a pivotal role in the birth of the Afro-German identity movement, had a momentous influence on countless poets, writers, activists. Indeed, the Free University of Berlin, where she was a visiting professor in 1984, now is home to an Audre Lorde archive at the Lankwitz campus. And Lorde coined the term Afro-German when she encouraged her students and friends to tell their story, which resulted in the book Farbe Bekennen, Showing Our Colors, essays by and about Afro-German women from the Middle Ages to the 20th century. To honor her work, the women's group Adefra, in coalition with Berlin's Green Party, renamed a street Audre Lorde Straße. So this is the second. At home in many places, Audre's primary home and primary position of influence was Hunter College, where she studied and taught so many so well. I first met Audre in 1958 when I was a freshman at Hunter, and Audre was the editor of the student literary magazine. Already a published poet and vigorous activist, Audre was a major influence on the civil and human rights movements as they emerged during the 1960s. Over the decades, her words blossomed, strengthened, and transcended all divides across the globe. Hunter was the core, and I conclude with Jonathan's words. Let me just say one thing. Hunter College High School, where she first met, it was, we talked about the great connections, but Diane DePrima was there. And Diane DePrima was Audre's lifelong friend, as many of us have been, and it was Diane DePrima who published Audre's first books. So Diane just recently passed, but it's really great to have that Hunter connection linking it all. Jonathan sent these words: Audre would be generally thrilled to have this street in New York named for her. She loved New York, and especially the street, because she loved Hunter. As both alumna and professor, Hunter was special to her. Audre loved to teach. She believed that young people were the future, and she took tremendous joy in her students and their growth. That's Jonathan Ashley Rollins, who lives in California and is very sorry not to be here, but we are very happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Are here. Thank you for that. Now 2 Hunter professors. Am I doing this right? Okay. Now 2 Hunter professors who knew and studied with Audre to read 2 more of her astounding poems. Please welcome Dr. Jacqueline Massey Brown of the Anthropology Department, who helps keep the Audre Lorde flame burning bright here at Hunter, and Dr. Melinda Goodman of the English Department, whom Audre recommended as her replacement when she went on sick leave in 1987 and has been on the Hunter faculty ever since. Please welcome.
This is Jacqueline's baby. This whole thing is Jacqueline's baby. This is Jacqueline's baby. She did this, and the next thing she's going to do is get Hunter West building named after her. As Audre would, as Toni Morrison would say, girl, 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 girl. Jack. All right, so the poem that I'm going to read is called Now. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. All right, you can hear me better now. Yeah. Okay. The poem is called Now. It's a short poem, and I'm expecting some help with it at the end, and I'll tell you when the chime. Okay. Now, woman power is black power is, human power is, always feeling my heart beats as my eyes open, as my hands move, as my mouth speaks. I am, are you ready? I said I am, are you ready? I am, are you ready? That's it. So here's my speech. First, dear Audre, first of all, thank you for your service. Your children should receive veterans benefits for all you have done for your country. Dear Audre, whose African name, Gamba Adisa, translates as she who makes her meaning clear. Knowing you, if you were here today, you would tell us to continue to develop our compassionate and creative use of our critical consciousness. You would want us to keep on taking action, to keep on teaching and learning how humans have resisted and continue to resist oppression on every level and on every front. Today is a day of celebration, a day to express our gratitude for your fierce, creative, dedicated, intersectional struggle for true and complete liberation. We thank Professor Jacqueline N. Brown, Mr. Harold Holzer, all the students, colleagues, administrators, and staff whose continued hard work makes Audre Lorde's Way a reality. And finally, dear Professor Audre Lorde, most of all, we thank you. And thank you to the past, present, and future freedom fighters who inspired and guided you, your recently deceased sister, Helen Lorde, your former husband, Edwin Rollins, your loving partners, Dr. Francis Clayton and Dr. Gloria I. Joseph, and especially thank you to your children, Dr. Elizabeth Lorde Rollins and Mr. Jonathan Ashley Rollins, whose constant support and sacrifice helped make it possible for there to be the Black mother lesbian poet warrior whose legacy is known today on planet Earth as Gamba Adisa, Audre Lorde.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's such a wonderful, beautiful, glorious day. I want to thank all of the righteous forces that came together to make Audre Lorde Way happen. President Raab, Councilperson Powers, and all of you, my new homeboy, Harold Holzer. And I thank all of you who are visiting us today from wherever. Welcome to Hunter College, where we now have the glorious sign, Audre Lorde Way, hanging over 68th and Lexington. And I want to say that this sign and its placement is so poetic. Audre will now preside over all we do in this entire place. So the sign is not just for students, although it is for you. And it's also for faculty, it's also for staff, it's also for administration. We can all arrive here at this wonderful place, look at that sign, and have Audre's legacy and her work and her words focus us for the day, in whatever capacity we function here. I think it's also poetic that the sign is over the subway, because that's how we all get home. And Audre not only wrote about racism and sexism and all of these big isms and oppression and patriarchy, she wrote about all of that, but she also wrote about everyday life. And one of her most powerful poems, which I thought about reading today and then thought better of it, is about an encounter she had on the subway. And it's just a classically intense Audre poem, and it's called For My Daughter, the Junkie on a Train. I encourage you all, when you go on the subway, to look up that poem and read it and know that that's also very, 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 very Audre. And the other thing I just want to say in terms of the subways, yes, that's how we all get home, where Audre's words are also important. Audre also often wrote about the domestic space, about the patriarchy that happens there, the complicated kinship family relationships that happen there, the joy that happens there. So it's just wonderful that we also have that sign to look at as we go home. Now I want to tell you a little story about the poem that I'm about to read and about the poet who wrote it. I took a course with Audre here at Hunter in the spring of 1986, and I do believe it's the last course that she taught here. She also, as Blanche mentioned, taught in Berlin for quite a while. And I want to just let you all know, as an aside, that if you really want to know more about Audre than you get from her poetry, which is a lot, and her essays, you must get this brilliant book. It's called Audre Lorde, Dream of Europe. And in it, we have transcripts of Audre's seminars. Someone in Berlin had the presence of mind to tape record every single seminar she gave. So you get her thoughts on pedagogy, you get her thoughts on the theory of Black aesthetics, you get her commenting on other poets' work, from the beatnik poets to Sonia Sanchez and the bridge poem. She's got a wonderful set of comments about that very famous poem that's part of this bridge called My Back. And you also get Audre, you get a sense of Audre as a fairly demanding teacher. So I urge you to get Audre Lorde, Dream of Europe. So that's an aside. In any event, after I graduated from Hunter College, I went off to Stanford for graduate school, and after a few months being there, Audre showed up at Stanford to give a reading. And the day before the reading, she called me to say hi and to check in with me and see if I was okay in this weird place. And she, in the course of the conversation, I told her that I had a friend who was taking a poetry course and who had been assigned to study intensively one poem and commit it to memory, and that he had chosen her poem, Coal. And Audre responded, "What a great choice." Now, I didn't ask her to elaborate, but one thing that fascinates me about this poem is, unlike a lot of her very famous poems, you often hear her talking about what gave rise to the poem. or in an interview she might talk about it, or in an essay she might talk about it, but she never, to my knowledge, gave us any context for this poem. But it was clearly an important poem to her because she just said it was a great choice. But also she named one of her books, Coal, after that poem. I want to offer, before I continue the story about what happened at Stanford, I want to modestly suggest what makes that poem so great, what makes it, in fact, a genius poem. Everyone knows Audre defined herself as a Black lesbian warrior mother poet. This poem, Coal, densely focuses on two aspects of herself, her Black self and her poet self. And the poet self is expressed through her relationship to words. On the one hand, we get her treatment of Blackness as something that is very solid and very certain, like coal. On the other hand, we get her rendering words as mercurial little forces that act upon her, that she seems to not have any control over, but that she's nevertheless really fascinated by. I can tell that, here's the other thing I wanted to say about this poem and what makes it a gem. The final line of this poem is so powerful and exquisite. It's such a perfect ending for this perfect poem. And you can tell that Audre knew she had this killer line at the end by the fact that she changed it twice over the course of all of her publications and the collected essay, the collected works of her poetry. The line appears 3 different ways. And it's almost like she thought to herself, okay, this is a killer line. I just totally need to nail this. And once again, we get her epic battle with words, just in terms of that last line and getting it right. So back to Stanford. At Stanford, Audre shows up at the biggest auditorium on campus. There are hundreds of students and people in attendance, and it's a packed house. And Audre gives the reading, a wonderful reading. I'm sure she was always wonderful, but it was a great, great reading. But in the middle of the reading, there was an earthquake. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced an earthquake. I don't recommend it. It is the weirdest thing ever. The walls are coming in at you, and it's loud, and we're in an auditorium. Audre Lorde read above the sound of an earthquake. She did not stop reading. She went right through, and in fact, she got more dramatic. She got louder, and the rest of us were, probably having a heart attack. And then by the end of the reading, now we're all in a state. And at the end of the reading, she took some questions from the audience. And one brother stood up and said, Audre, would you please read one of your older poems from one of your previously published works? And Audre said, oh, no, I didn't bring that stuff. I really wasn't prepared for all of that. And then she stopped herself and she said, I'll read Coal. And then she said, Jackie, are you here? I raised my hand. She looked at me and said, this is for you. Aww. Yeah, right? Because of that tremendous honor that she bestowed upon me in that moment, I want to use this moment on this glorious occasion to take the honor of now reading this poem back to her. Audre, are you here? This is for you. Coal. I is the total Black being spoken from the earth's inside. There are many kinds of open. How a diamond comes into a knot of flame. How sound comes into a word colored by who pays what for speaking. Some words are open like a diamond on glass windows, singing out within the passing crash of sun. Then there are words like stapled wagers in a perforated book, buy and sign and tear apart, and come whatever wills all chances, the stub remains, an ill-pulled tooth with a ragged edge. Some words live in my throat, breeding like adders. Others know sun, seeking like gypsies over my tongue, to explode through my lips like young sparrows bursting from shell. Some words bedevil me. Love is a word, another kind of a word. As the diamond comes into a knot of flame, I am black because I come from the earth's inside. Take my word for jewel in the open light.
I began by quoting some words by Audre Lorde, so let me end by reading a brief but magnificent poem, The Means to Survive, an anthem that speaks to today and to all the generations to come who will find truth and fire in her verse. Surviving means to accept what has happened, to fight, to not give up, to not let what happened take over. Surviving means to find people, to connect with them, to share experiences, and to find yourself through those experiences. Surviving means to help, to teach, to learn. And now to conclude, and no one doubts for a second here that Audre is still as relevant today as she was 30 years ago. She's still a force in our lives. But it's so heartening to see undergraduate students reading and learning from her writing today. This year, Hunter's Eva Caston Grove program assigned 5 students to work on Audre Lorde's writing together with the important issue of public statues and memorials. I'm told they've done an absolutely wonderful job this semester, and we're going to bring them up to this stage to read not from Audre's poetry, but from her prose. Please come up and join us, and ladies and gentlemen, please welcome readings from Audre's powerful essay. Thank you, Harold. There is no hierarchy of oppressions, from the class of 2022, Nolan Lyons, and from the class of 2024, Amber DeMello, Vasuki Gaba, Nicole Palmetto, and Isabella Paul. Please welcome them.
Hi. There is no hierarchy of oppressions. I was born black and a woman. I am trying to become the strongest person I can become, to live the life I have been given, and to help affect change towards a livable future for this earth and for my children. As a black, lesbian, feminist, socialist, poet, mother of 2, including 1 boy, and a member of an interracial couple, I usually find myself part of some group in which the majority defines me as deviant, difficult, inferior, or just plain wrong.
From my membership in all of these groups, I have learned that oppression and the intolerance of difference come in all shapes and sexes and colors and sexualities, and that among those of us who share the goals of liberation and a workable future for our children, there can be no hierarchy of oppression. I have learned that sexism and heterosexism both arise from the same source as racism. Oh, says a voice from the black community, but being black is normal. Well, I and many black people of my age can remember grimly the days when it didn't used to be.
I simply do not believe that one aspect of myself can possibly profit from the oppression of any other part of my identity. I know that my people cannot possibly profit from the oppression of any other group that seeks the right to peaceful existence. Rather, we diminish ourselves by denying to others what we have shed blood to obtain for our children. And those children need to learn that we should not become like each other in order to work together toward a future that we will all share.
Within the lesbian community, I am Black, and within the Black community, I am a lesbian. Any attack against Black people is a lesbian and gay issue, because I and thousands of other Black women are a part of the lesbian community. Any attack against lesbians and gays is a Black issue, because thousands of lesbians and gay men are Black. There is no hierarchy of oppression.
I cannot afford the luxury of fighting one form of oppression only. I cannot afford to believe that freedom from intolerance is the right of only one particular group. And I cannot afford to choose between the fronts upon which I must battle forces of discrimination. Wherever they appear to destroy me, and when they appear to destroy me, it will not be long before they appear to destroy you.
You're the next generation. You did an outstanding job. Can we have another round of applause? So I've been tethered to this script. I'm finally down to the last page. I want to thank all of you for being here, and it's been an honor to share the stage with these kick-ass women. I'm overdressed here. She has on cowboy boots and she's got the little leopard pants. They're ready to march up in this city, okay? And I just want to say very quickly, because I know time is over, but I, as the great-great-great-granddaughter of an enslaved man who fought to free this country from slavery, I'm happy to report that Audre Lorde was an activist and an emancipator in her own right. I'm not reading from the script now. I'm telling you from the heart. I am so proud of what this woman did and how she reached down and made people listen to her. Because you know what? In this country, people try to tell Black women to be silent. We don't want to hear from you. So the fact that she reached down and spoke her piece is worthy of her name to ride high above that. Write that part for me. That's from deep down in the soul. So now for the big reveal. Audre said, as if she were anticipating this very moment, I am my best work. A series of roadmaps, she called it. And we are ready now to literally change the roadmap of the Upper East Side. And before you partake in the beautiful refreshments and reception, I want to thank you, President Raab, for being such a dynamic leader, Councilmember Powell, our distinguished panel of women, Harold Holzer, the one and only. I love Harold Holzer. You know, he's written amazing books about President Lincoln. He's like one of the most famous people in America. But I want to say, I put my microphone, this is shameless promotion at this point. I thought I was going to have to shoot, but my camera queen is here, and this is going to be on New York 1 tonight at 10 p.m. 10 p.m. And I'm going to personally make this the event of the year tonight because I will be anchoring. So let's go to the corner. Where are we going, Harold? We're going to the corner, northwest corner. We're going to unveil this sign, and we are going to make Audre proud of us today. Okay? Thank you all for being here.
Hold it.